Go ahead. All right. So, why don't you introduce yourself and tell me how you got to be art director?
Sure. My name is Damon Iannuzzelli, and I'm the art director for Proletariat, which is a small Cambridge-based studio building mobile and tablet games. I got my start in the industry. I went to art school down in Providence at the Rhode Island School of Design. While I was in school, I met some other folks who were interested in making games up at Brown University. As it turns out, I met some people through them who introduced me to Turbine, which is a game company that makes massively multiplayer online games in the Boston area. And so I went to work at Turbine about 3 months after graduating from school. I started as an intern there, and then gradually kind of worked my way up to senior artist over, I guess I was there just about 4 years. After Turbine, I was kind of looking for a change, moved to the West Coast to join a studio called Insomniac Games. And there I worked on a couple of did a few small things for the Ratchet titles, but really they brought me on to work on the PS3 launch title Resistance.
That must have been exciting.
That was. There were a lot of challenges in dealing with brand new hardware and audience expectations for the launch of a next generation console. The game actually started out as a space opera at one point and then turned into this alternate history shooter, so that was really fun to be on that kind of roller coaster. I eventually ended up being promoted to lead artist on Resistance, and then I was lead artist on Resistance 2 at the time that I left in late 2007. And I came back to the East Coast to join some of my old coworkers from Turbine in a startup venture called Conduit Labs. And Conduit's mission was to make social web games. This is before Facebook kind of became the de facto platform for social games. And we made a web game called Loud Crowd, and we made a couple of Facebook games, one called Music Pets and another called Super Dance. And these games were all about sort of playing games and sharing music with your friends online. Very much influenced by sort of the popularity of Guitar Hero and Rock Band, things like that. And we were even right across the street from Harmonix in Central Square for a time. And then Conduit was purchased by Zynga, famous for Words with Friends and Farmville. And Zynga turned the studio into Zynga Boston. And at that point, I ended up kind of de facto becoming the art director because it's sort of what I'd been doing in practice anyway, even without the job title. So I was art director on, so the first sort of credited project that I was art director on was Indiana Jones Adventure World, which starred Indiana Jones in a Facebook social game for Facebook. So it took me, I guess, 10 years to finally become an art director. And honestly, that's probably about the amount of time that I think it takes. That's the right amount of time that it took for me anyway. I certainly wouldn't have been ready to lead a team of people and direct a big project like that when I had just come out of school. Zynga kind of closed the Boston studio last fall, and so I got together with 4 of the other people from Zynga Boston, and we founded Proletariat. And now we're doing mobile tablet games, and so I'm currently the art director for the studio, but we're really just working on one project right now called World Zombination.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about World Zombination?
So World Zombination is a faction-based, persistent world strategy game where people can either choose to be humans or zombies, and they're basically fighting one another for world domination. And this kind of manifests, we have a world map that kind of shows the state of conflict, and there will be hot zones, and when we demoed recently in Seattle and then in Boston, we built levels for Seattle and Boston with a couple of we had the Space Needle in the Seattle map, and we had the Prudential Tower in the Boston map. And people could choose their side, and clearly, if you're the zombies, your main mission is to destroy hospitals, kill survivors, and eat brains. And if you're the humans, it's more or less simply to survive and to rescue other survivors. So,
cool. All right. So tell me, what's the process for building art for this game? What do you go through?
So in the beginning, we really just kind of discuss things like theme and overall story, and the kind of audience we're going after, and whether it's going to be a serious game or a funny game. And so all of those conversations between all of us, engineers, designers, and artists, that's just sort of to galvanize what kind of project we're working on, get everybody on the same page about that. And then I go off, and at the time it was just me, so I went off and started just doodling and drawing and sketching and making concept art to support all those conversations that we were having. And so, as it turned out, we didn't want to make a really dark adult horror game. We wanted to make something that was a little more fun and lighthearted, maybe a little more wide audience kind of friendly. And so the word we kind of came up with in the beginning was Funpocalypse. So we wanted an apocalyptic world, but we wanted it to be fun, and we wanted it to be colorful and humorous, and not bogged down in a lot of road style apocalypse minutia. So we'd also just seen, given our influences, we'd also just seen the World War Z trailer, so we knew we wanted tons of zombies on screen. So I just went to work on a couple pieces of concept art to kind of support all that, and ended up making something that was just a mock-up of a potential game screen of this kind of pulled-out camera view of a sort of like a SimCity place flooded with zombies. And if you looked really closely, there were some funny little notes going on, even in this, that you could still pick out even in this sort of screenshot style approach. And that kind of really sold the idea. When people saw that image, they were like, oh yeah, that's a game I totally want to play. I get exactly what you're trying to do. And so that first kind of image, sort of, you have to do that on every game to kind of sell the idea of what you're trying to build, because without that sort of first initial kind of pass, it's just vapor, it's just ideas, and from there you can use that to inform all sorts of other decisions. And so I went off and started just drawing lots of characters, and coming up with sort of more the details of how our art style would work from a 2D standpoint.
Cool. And what sort of problems did you have to overcome?
Well, the interesting thing with developing art for games is that there's always technical limitations. So a lot of what's great about what I can bring to a team, given my experience, is that I've worked on such a variety of different projects, and technical restrictions from 13 years ago are roughly the same technical restrictions that we have on mobile nowadays. So it's kind of gone full circle, where we got all the way up to the sort of AAA high-end console levels of detail, and now we're back to where we were 10 years ago. So a lot of it is just trying to figure out how to realize the vision of the game, and realize sort of like my personal artistic vision for the game, given technical restrictions. Can we do real-time 3D? If we can't do real-time 3D, can we do some real-time 3D and render other things out as 2D elements? Because we know we can draw a lot more 2D elements on screen versus the 3D stuff. So a lot of the art style development was around developing a look that would work very well with the kind of technical restrictions that we were going to have in front of us, as opposed to developing an art style that we were going to constantly be fighting with the technical restrictions.
Cool. what's it like to work with the technical team, the programmers? So how do you guys interact?
Well, fortunately for me, a few of us go back a few years. One, I don't think with any of the engineers who started with Proletariat, we'd all worked with one another for at least 2 years prior to founding Proletariat, and a few of us had worked off and on for closer to a decade. So,
going more for the back and forth, how, like, functionally how you work,
okay,
as
all right.
opposed to how you get along.
Let's see. So, I think so. Working with engineers is can be a little bit of a teeth gnashing experience, I think, on both sides, because engineers. Engineering is kind of it's more binary. A feature either works or it doesn't work, and the engineers always want things to work well and to work very fast, and their performance is always in mind. Artists, myself included, we tend to want to make things look beautiful and eschew any and all limitations and guidelines to making sure things run quickly and are within budget and within spec. So that tends to be the most of the tenor of the kind of conversations that artists will have with engineers, figuring out, negotiating, essentially, negotiating and horse trading for visual features versus performance, and frankly versus time and budget. There are lots of other features that go into a game that aren't necessarily visual or audio, and fitting in those support for those visual features amongst all the gameplay stuff and the sort of server and client engineering. You sort of have to pick your battles, and I think everybody gets a few silver bullets they can use on the project, and you have to know when and where to use those, and you can't use them on everything.
Cool. So, if you were talking to some young art student today who's interested in getting into the business, what would you tell them?
So, are we talking about somebody who's in school and like?
Yeah, somebody who's in their junior, senior year. So
I would tell students who are looking to get into the games industry, and especially people who are. Let me start over. Students who are thinking about a career in art production for games should really focus on fundamentals. I think drawing and painting, sculpting, color theory, composition, knowing your predecessors, art history, all of that stuff, that's like the most important thing to me. The tools are frankly, the 3D tools, learning Photoshop, or Illustrator, or 3D program like Maya or ZBrush, those are frankly easy to pick up compared to the fundamental skill of knowing form and knowing how to translate 3D objects into a set of two-dimensional lines on a page. Now, reality being what it is, like to get a job in the games industry, you do need to know some of the sort of tools of the trade. Some 3D software. You definitely need to be familiar with Photoshop. But if you don't have the fundamentals down, those you won't be able to make good work regardless of what tool you use. So I always encourage students to do more figure drawing, to do lots of observational drawing, to work with color a lot. A lot of students are can be a little tentative in their use of color, or afraid of color even when they're younger. I certainly was. And again, just fundamentals and lots of life drawing. Life drawing is like the biggest thing that'll help train that eye and train that hand to make better and better work.
So when they come to see you for a job, right, what are you going to look for in the budding artist?
Well, again, I'm going to look to see that. So even if somebody gives me a portfolio and it's completely personal work, it's very stylized, and it's not figure drawing or life drawing, I can still sort of tell if they've got the right foundation behind them, because there are certain things that, regardless of art style, will come through. Sense of composition. sense of depth of space. If we're talking about images, if we're talking about 3D models, their ability to sculpt and delineate interesting forms. You know, so and then so these are all sort of execution and technique kinds of things. And then there's the idea, right? You're also looking for somebody who's going to whose work is not only executed well, but has some interesting, you know, creative thought behind it. So something that sort of surprises me, you know, if I look at somebody's portfolio and there's something in there that makes me laugh, that goes a long way, because getting an individual to find humor in something when they're just sitting by themselves and they're not around other people is really, really powerful. So you know, because that tells me that there's somebody who not only can they make good work, but they're also going to contribute to the creative climate that, you know, I'm trying to, you know, build a team on.